Something tore open above a quiet Korean city. It was not lightning. It was not a storm. A dark seam split the sky, glowing faintly at its center, and for one long heartbeat the whole world felt wrong. Birds went silent. Dogs whined behind fences. People on the sidewalk looked up without knowing why they were looking. Then a man stepped out of the seam and fell. He landed in an empty alley behind a convenience store, boots first, calm as a passenger stepping off a bus. His clothes were rags. Ash coated every inch of him. Old blood ran down his arms in dry brown streaks. He did not groan. He did not stagger. He simply straightened, brushed grit off one shoulder, and looked around like a man checking whether his old street still existed. 10,000 years earlier, this man had been dragged into hell. Now he had walked back out. The tier behind him closed with a soft crack, but the damage was already done. Deep beneath the city, in places nobody bothered to watch, tiny fractures ran through the fabric of the world. Sleeping monsters twitched inside dungeon gates that had been calm for years. Far away, cult altars grew unexpectedly warm. In a candlelit chamber somewhere in Europe, a hooded man snapped his head up, sensing something impossible. None of them yet understood what had returned. None of them knew his name was Kang Wu. The world only knew the surface of the story. 5 years earlier, a lonely young man named Kang Wu had disappeared without a trace. No family reported him missing. No friend went looking. School records simply stopped, and the world moved on. He had grown up an orphan. Nobody had ever needed to keep track of him. So when he vanished, nobody noticed. He had spent every one of those 10,000 years in hell remembering that. To understand what walked out of that alley, you have to understand what happened between those two moments. Between the day the system chose an orphan boy and the day a demon king came home. 10,000 years is not a number the human mind is built for. Kang Wu had counted the first 100 in his head, day by day, the way a prisoner scratches marks on a wall. He stopped counting after that because counting stopped helping. Hell did not care about time. It had layers, and each layer wanted to eat him. He had run through the first ones as a boy who could barely lift a rusted sword. He had climbed through the middle ones as a young man learning to feed on the same demons that hunted him. By the time he reached the deep circles, he had stopped looking like a boy at all. The food there was the worst part. He tried not to think about it, even now. Old demon flesh. Cold, gray, tasting of copper and rot. He had eaten it because there was nothing else, and he had cried the first year, and then not cried for a very long time. The taste stayed with him. It clung to the back of his throat for 100 years after he stopped eating it. He had grown strong in the way something grows strong when nothing else is allowed to. Slowly, painfully, until nothing in hell could look him in the eye. He fought the 7 princes of hell one by one, patient as a man clearing weeds from a field, and one by one he killed them. On the throne of the 9th circle he sat alone. Demons whispered a title for him in the dark, the Eternal Conqueror, the Demon King who could not be killed. He hated the title. He hated the throne. He had ruled a kingdom of things that made him sick to look at. A queen of succubi named Lilith had wrapped her tentacles around him and called him husband, and he had smiled through gritted teeth because refusing her openly was worse than surviving her. She was, in a strange way, the last cruelty of hell, a wife with too many arms who loved him too much. At the end of all of it, sitting on a mountain of bones taller than any human city, he had opened a gate no demon knew existed, the Myriad Demon Gate, his private door out. He had stepped through, and reality itself had complained, and now here he was, standing in an alley in Korea, breathing air that did not smell like blood. He closed his eyes. He inhaled, real air, real dust, a distant smell of frying oil from the convenience store. Kang Wu felt something in his chest go loose. He had come home. There was one problem. The moment he had crossed back into his world, a system he did not recognize had wrapped around him like a net. He could feel it clamped over his power, choking it down to a thread. 10,000 years of conquered strength, most of it locked behind a seal he had not chosen. When he checked his own status, the numbers were so pitiful he almost laughed. Level 1, F rank, a rookie. The Gaia defense system, whatever that was, had decided he was harmless. He decided that was fine. For now, he needed clothes that were not rags. He needed food that was not made of demon. He needed a bed and a hot shower and, more than anything else in the world, a bowl of kimchi stew. That craving had kept him alive in hell longer than any weapon. He had promised himself, on nights when the cold of the ninth circle got into his bones, that if he ever tasted kimchi stew again, he would sit down and cry. He stepped out of the alley onto the street. That was where he saw her. She was running. A young woman in a torn white blouse, hair whipping behind her, cutting across a park at the edge of the sidewalk. She was pale. Her sleeve was dark with blood. Something in her face was pure panic. Not the panic of a mugging, but of something else. And Kang Wu felt his old instincts light up before he had time to think. Then he saw what was chasing her. A goblin ducked out from between two trees, green and hunched, with teeth too long for its jaw. Then a second one. Then a third. They moved in a way ordinary people would not recognize. He recognized it instantly. Pack hunters. Herding her toward a corner. Behind the park, faintly shimmering, was a rip in the air he only now noticed. A low-ranked gate had opened here without warning. E-rank, at a rough guess. Small, angry things had come out of it before anyone at the authority could arrive to close it. Kang Wu had walked into his first Earth crisis inside of 10 minutes. He was tired, he wanted stew, he wanted a shower. And still he moved, because the shape of a woman running from monsters was not a shape he could ignore. He crossed the park in a handful of strides. His sealed body felt slow and clumsy to him, like wearing wet clothes, but by ordinary standards he still moved fast. He reached the first goblin as it lunged for her ankle. He caught it by the throat mid-air and squeezed. The little creature popped in his hand like something that had never been alive to begin with. The second goblin froze. Then it snarled and jumped at him. Kang Wu killed it with the back of his hand. The third one turned to run. He caught it too. The young woman skidded to a stop against a bench, one hand pressed to a shallow cut on her arm, and stared at him. Her chest heaved. Her eyes were huge. He must have looked like a horror to her, standing there in ash and rags, with two dead goblins at his feet and a third in his fist. She did not scream, which impressed him. She asked, in a shaking voice, whether he was hurt. He blinked at her. Something in his brain, 10,000 years of it, went completely still. She was not asking whether he was going to hurt her. She was asking if he was hurt. There was worry in her face for him. Actual, straightforward worry. And she had 2 arms. Only 2 arms. No tentacles. No writhing extras hidden under the blouse. Kang Wu, Demon King, conqueror of the Ninth Circle, killer of princes, opened his mouth and said the first thing that came into his head. He asked her to marry him. She stared. He stared back. His own voice echoed in his ears like a stranger's. He had absolutely meant it, which was the alarming part. Before she could faint or run, he cleared his throat and knelt beside her arm. Old habit took over. He reached toward her wound and pulled at a thread of the strange new energy this world was giving him. A faint warmth passed from his palm to her skin. The cut sealed. She looked down at her own arm as if she did not believe what she was seeing. Her name, she told him quietly, was Han Sola. She was a healer. B rank. She had been on her way home from a small hospital shift when the gate had cracked open behind her, and she had turned the wrong way, and the goblins had come. She had used up her mana keeping herself alive long enough to run. Kang Wu nodded, because nodding felt like the correct human thing to do. He was not, at that moment, thinking about goblins. He was thinking about how her voice stayed calm, even while she was frightened, about the way her hair fell over one eye, and she did not bother to fix it, about the small fact that she had asked, before anything else, whether he was hurt. In an age of loneliness longer than most histories, no one had ever asked him that. Not once. Sola looked at him again and asked, gently, if he was alone. He said he was. She hesitated. Then, because she was that kind of person, she offered to buy him a meal. He said the word kimchi before his brain caught up with his mouth. She almost smiled. Her small apartment sat above a laundromat on a narrow side street. The stairs creaked. The hallway smelled of soap. She warned him her mother was home and might fuss. He said he did not mind fuss. Inside, the apartment was warm and small and painfully ordinary. A little television played the news on mute. A rice cooker hissed on the counter. Her mother, a soft woman with tired eyes, took one look at the ragged stranger her daughter had brought home, and, without asking a single question, told him to sit down and eat. The world, Kang Wu discovered, had moved 5 years while he had been gone 10,000. The news made no sense to him. Some anchor was talking about gate closures and a raid guild called Mir. A photograph of a smug man in an expensive suit flashed on the screen. The caption named him Kim Jae-hyun, chairman of Mir Electronics, guild master of Mir. He looked like a man who had never once been told no. Kang Wu made a small, quiet note of that face and let it slide out of his mind for later. Then Sola set the bowl in front of him. Steam rose, red broth, chunks of soft tofu and pork and cabbage. The smell hit him like a physical blow. His hand shook when he picked up the spoon. He took one bite. Kang Wu, killer of princes, put his spoon down and covered his face with both hands, and after an age longer than empires he cried. Not gently. He cried the way a very young child cries, in gasps, with tears sliding between his fingers. Sola and her mother said nothing. Sola sat quietly across from him. Her mother rested a hand on his shoulder and left it there. He ate the whole bowl. He ate a second bowl. He ate a third. He tore a piece of bread in half by old habit before remembering he did not need to share it, and then he laughed, wetly, because being able to eat until he was full was the strangest miracle of his life. He was 3 spoonfuls into a 4th bowl when the front door slammed open. The sound was wrong. Too hard. Too fast. A man in a rumpled shirt stumbled into the apartment. He reeked of alcohol. He was thin, greasy, and mean around the eyes. He took one look at Kang Wu at the table, and his face went a color like a bruise. Sola went pale. Her mother stood up so quickly her chair scraped. The man, it turned out, was Sola's older brother. His name was Han Tae-hyun. He shouted at Sola for bringing a strange man into the apartment. He shouted at their mother for allowing it. When Sola tried to speak, he crossed the room in 3 strides and hit her. She hit the wall. Her mother lunged forward, and he shoved her aside too, hard enough that she went down on her hip and cried out. Then, because the world was cruel and Han Tae-hyun was drunk, he turned. He knocked into the table. Kang Wu's 4th bowl of kimchi stew tipped, slid, and shattered on the floor. Red broth spread across the tiles. The room went very, very quiet. Kang Wu had not moved yet. He looked down at the mess on the floor. His gaze drifted to Sola, crumpled by the wall, holding her cheek. Then to the small woman on her hip beside the fallen chair. Then to the shattered bowl. And finally to the red puddle of stew he had waited an age to taste. Something inside him folded quietly shut. When he finally raised his eyes to Han Tae-hyun, the man took a step back. He did not know why. He was drunk. He was bigger. He should have felt no fear at all. But the ragged stranger at the table was smiling in a way that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Kang Wu stood. He asked Tae-hyun, in a mild, polite voice, whether he understood what he had just done. Tae-hyun sneered and swore at him. Kang Wu nodded, as if satisfied that Tae-hyun did not understand. Then he began his lesson. He did not kill him. He was very careful about that. He was, after all, a guest. He simply took hold of the front of Tae-hyun's shirt and lifted him, one-handed, until his feet no longer touched the floor. He walked him into the small kitchen. He pushed his face down toward the puddle of red broth on the floor. He asked him to apologize to the stew. Tae-hyun choked out a laugh, thinking it was a joke. It was not a joke. Kang Wu let a thin thread of his sealed power slip its leash. Just a whisper of it, a pressure in the air. The power of dread, or what Earth's frail rules would allow through of it, seeping out from him like cold from a freezer. Tae-hyun's laughter stopped mid-breath. His eyes went wide. His mouth opened, and this time when Kang Wu asked him to apologize, he did. He was made to apologize thoroughly. He was told to say, out loud, that kimchi stew was sacred. First in a normal voice, then a slightly higher one. Then higher still. Kang Wu, patient as a man tuning a violin, took him up through the octaves. By the 7th, Tae-hyun was screaming in a pitch that made Sola's ears ring, tears streaming, apologizing to a puddle of soup. Kang Wu then made him wash the dishes. Every dish in the apartment. Even the clean ones. Sola stood in the doorway with her mother pressed against her side, watching a man she had met an hour ago casually break her brother in half without breaking a single plate. She should have been frightened. She was not. She was, she realized much later, relieved. When Tae-hyun was done, Kang Wu let him crawl out the front door and did not watch him go. He turned back to Sola and her mother and asked, very seriously, if they had more kimchi stew. They did. He ate it. By late afternoon, he had learned enough of the new world to feel foolish. 5 years. Gates, ranks, players. a national system that measured everyone by numbers and letters. Sola told him about it patiently. She did not ask him where he had come from, which he was grateful for. He suspected she had guessed he did not want to answer. She told him he should get himself measured. Otherwise, he could not use gates, could not join a guild, could not do the ordinary business of surviving in this new Korea. The player support center was only a short walk away. She offered to go with him. He went alone. It felt safer. The center was bright and clean, filled with young people in matching jackets. A bored tester in a lab coat led him to a small room. In the middle of the room sat a smooth glass marble on a metal pedestal. He was told to place his hand on it. He almost laughed. He knew exactly what would happen if he let his real strength touch that little marble. It would explode. It would probably take the wall with it, so he did what any demon king with self-control would do. He tucked his power in tight, thought small thoughts, and let only a whisper of his ordinary human energy leak out. The marble glowed once, weakly, a soft yellow light. The tester glanced at his screen and told him, with the polite dead voice of someone who did this all day, that he had come up as F rank, the lowest possible rank. The tester looked at Kang Wu's clothes, then at his hands, and there was pity in his eyes. He said Kang Wu could still register. F-rank players were allowed to attempt E-rank gates. He was told about safety recommendations, party sizes, standard clearance procedure. He was told 100 things he did not care about. He nodded politely to all of them. Kang Wu thanked the tester and walked out. The moment the door swung shut behind him, the marble on the pedestal shivered. Its soft yellow light died. Then, from deep inside the glass, a black stain bloomed. It spread through the marble like ink in water, filling every inch of it, until the whole sphere was a lightless void that seemed to eat the light of the room. The tester frowned. He tapped his screen. He turned back to the pedestal. The marble cracked. Then it burst. Not outward, inward. It collapsed into itself with a wet crunching sound and left nothing behind but a scorched dent in the metal. The tester stared. He said something under his breath he was not supposed to say at work. He picked up his phone. Down the street, unaware, Kang Wu was walking back towards Sola's apartment, thinking about whether he could get her mother to teach him how to make kimchi stew from scratch. He passed a bakery. He stopped in front of a pretty display of pastries and looked at them for a long time, like a boy in a museum. He went in. He bought one of each. He carried the bag with both hands as if it were a treasure. The city moved around him. Buses passed. A pair of schoolgirls giggled at him. A dog on a leash sniffed his ankles and sat down beside him for no reason. He crouched and scratched its ears. The owner said the dog was normally shy. He smiled and stood and walked on. A block behind him, a black car pulled up outside the player support center. Two men in suits got out, spoke to the tester, and left with a bag containing what remained of the shattered marble. Nobody would tell Kang Wu about that. Not for a long time. He did not need to be told. He knew. Back at Sola's apartment, he set the bag of pastries on the table, and Sola's face lit up in a way that made his chest feel strange. Her mother clucked at him for spending money he did not have. He did not have the heart to explain that money, in the new Korea, was going to become a very simple problem for him, especially if certain gates had things worth eating inside them. That night he slept on the couch under a borrowed blanket, in a small apartment that smelled of soap and stew. And after 10 millennia of restless nights, he finally slept without waking. In the morning, he registered as an F-rank player. By the afternoon, he was walking through his first E-rank gate alone. The gate stood in a wooded lot outside the city, taped off with orange cones. Nobody was watching. A junior authority officer at the perimeter tried to warn him solo runs were discouraged. Kang Wu smiled politely, showed his brand new card, and walked past. The inside of the gate was a cavern of gray stone lit by pale blue lichen. It smelled of wet mud. Goblins scurried in loose bands, clacking small rusted knives together. A few larger shapes moved further in. He could sense the boss, a hobgoblin, sulking in a chamber at the far end. It felt to him like a mouse feels to a cat. He took his time. He wanted to learn what this new world let him do. The first goblin fell to a single strike of his bare hand. So did the next. He tried a low kick on the third, and felt the ripple of that strange new energy, mana it was called here, flow up his leg from the ground. Not demonic energy, not yet, but a sibling of it. Something he could use while his real power slept. He fed on the corpses. That part was quiet. He simply pressed his palm to a goblin's still chest, and a thread of dark warmth pulled from the body into him. the authority of gluttony, drowsy but not asleep. Each little life became a small drop of strength added to a very deep glass. The goblins died. He grew. Halfway through the cave, a small chime rang inside his skull. The Gaia system, that clumsy babysitter, had noticed him doing well. He had crossed level 10. A moment of light bloomed inside his chest, and something inside him, deep behind the myriad gate, shifted a millimeter. His second awakening. A skill unrolled itself in front of him in silent letters. Insatiable hunger. He almost laughed. His old power was leaking through the cracks of its cage, one drop at a time. The hobgoblin at the far end of the cave heard him coming and roared. It was twice the size of the others, and swung an iron club as tall as a man. Kang Wu let it hit him. The club broke. The hobgoblin stared at its shattered weapon. It looked up at him, its small eyes filled with an emotion goblins did not usually get to feel. He killed it before it could name that feeling. He walked out of the gate an hour later in his ragged clothes, with clean hands and a light heart. The junior officer at the perimeter blinked at him and asked, nervously, whether the boss was cleared. He said it was. The officer typed the report. His screen showed a solo clear on an E-rank gate by an F-rank rookie, on his very first run, in 1 hour. The officer read it twice. He looked up to double-check the man's face. Kang Wu waved once and started walking home. The officer picked up his phone. Miles away, in a mirrored office at the top of a Mir Electronics tower, a secretary knocked softly on Kim Jae-hyun's door. She placed a slim folder on his desk. She apologized for the interruption and said only that some strange reports had come in that his people should probably see. A shattered measurement marble, a solo E-rank clear by a rookie in rags. Kim Jae-hyun did not look up from the papers he was signing. He waved her off and told her to send the file to the vice master. Down the hall, in an office with cleaner light and colder eyes, Kim Young-hun opened the folder. He read the name, Kang Wu. He smiled, very slowly, the way a man smiles when he thinks he has found something small and easy to break. He was not looking at something small. He was looking at a demon king. He just did not know it yet. Young-hun did his homework the way a man dusts a knife before he uses it. By evening, he had pulled up every scrap of paper Kang Wu had ever left behind. There was almost nothing. A single school record that stopped without warning. A blank family box. An address that no longer existed because the building had been torn down 2 years earlier. The whole file smelled of a nobody. Young-hun paged through it and felt his shoulders relax. The shattered marble was strange, of course. Faulty equipment did happen. A solo clear on an E-rank gate by a rookie was rare, but rookies with a lucky draw of stats did exist. The trainee testers had probably confused a defect for something more. He would have someone quietly watch the ragged man for a week. If anything real turned up, the report would go to his own guild master, and the credit would go to him. If nothing turned up, the name got dropped in a drawer and forgotten. He closed the folder and smiled again, because in his experience, no name that dull ever went anywhere. Kang Wu spent the next few days grinding. He liked the word. He had heard some teenagers use it at the ramen shop where Sola bought them dinner, and it fit exactly what he wanted to do. Grind. Small work, done in patient repetition, wearing an edge into steel. He took E-rank gates one after another. He walked past officers who were beginning to recognize him and gave the same polite little nod each time. He wore new clothes now. Nothing fancy, a plain dark jacket and jeans Sola had picked out for him, because his rags kept making shopkeepers refuse him service. Each gate he entered emptied like a bowl being tipped up. Goblins. Kobolds. A rare imp that had wandered from something worse. Each corpse fed him. Each level nudged the seal inside him, a fraction looser. He watched his own numbers climb with a kind of quiet interest, the way a farmer watches a plant grow. Sola was the strange part. He was not used to a person who noticed when he came home. She noticed. She would look up from a stack of hospital paperwork on the kitchen table and simply ask how the day had been. And something in his chest would go tight and warm and confused. He would answer the way a soldier answers, in short, useful sentences. She would set out tea. Her mother would bring rice. On the second night, her mother had cut his hair with kitchen scissors because it was still tangled with ash. She had done it without asking, humming under her breath. He had sat still through it with his eyes stinging, and neither of them had commented on that either. Han Tae-hyun did not come back. Word on the street was that he had checked himself into a small clinic and refused visitors. Sola never mentioned him. Kang Wu did not raise it. When she thought no one was looking, she would rest her fingers on the wall where her brother had thrown her, and press, gently, as if testing whether it still hurt. Kang Wu saw it once and pretended not to. On the fourth morning he woke to find her already in the kitchen, packing him a lunchbox with 2 boiled eggs, a small container of rice, and 2 folded slices of ham arranged into a heart. She turned red when she noticed him watching. She said the heart was for the ham to sit flat. He nodded seriously and did not point out that ham did not need help sitting flat. He carried the lunchbox all day like a treasure and did not eat it until sundown. That was the day he graduated to D-rank gates. The Player Support Center allowed F-rank players into D-rank gates only in a licensed party of at least 4, and only if they had cleared a set number of E-rank runs first. Kang Wu had cleared enough for a small nation. The desk clerk stamped his card without looking up. She told him D-rank gates were dangerous. She told him solo runs were forbidden. He said he understood and left. The gate he chose sat inside an abandoned parking garage on the edge of the city. The garage had been condemned after the gate opened underneath it. Weeds pushed through the concrete. A rusted sign warned trespassers. 2 cars were parked outside despite the sign, both black and both new. Kang Wu paused. He watched them for a minute. Then he stepped past them and inside. The gate was already open. The tape sealing it was cut. That was not normal. He stepped through. The inside of a D-rank gate looked nothing like the first ones he had cleared. This one was a stretched marsh under a bruised orange sky. Reeds swayed with no wind. Water bubbled at his ankles. A short distance ahead, on a small dry mound, 6 players were standing around another player who was on his knees. Kang Wu ducked behind a tall clump of reeds and watched. The 6 wore matching armbands. A green circle over a red spear. Andress Guild. He had seen the logo in a newspaper Sola had left on the counter. A mid-ranked guild with money and a reputation for taking the ugly jobs. The kneeling player was a boy who could not have been older than 17. His jacket was cheap. His hands were shaking. The Andress leader, a broad man with a scar that pulled his lip up on one side, was speaking in a bored voice. He was explaining, patiently, that the rookies who had signed on for this raid had a job to do. That job was not to swing a sword. That job was to make noise, to run, to attract the lizard men that lived deeper in the marsh. To die pretty far away, so the professional part of the guild could gather up the loot the lizard men dropped without any trouble. The boy said, in a very small voice, that he had not signed for that. The scarred man told him he had signed a contract. The contract said clearance support. Making noise was clearance support. Kang Wu, hidden in the reeds, tilted his head like a dog hearing a curious sound. So this was how the corrupt corners of this world worked, he had wondered. 3 more rookies were being led up the mound now, all young, all pale, all clutching cheap sticks and short swords with the wrong end of the grip. One of them was a girl who looked barely 15. The Andress players fanned out and started nudging them with the flat sides of blades, herding them further into the marsh. The lizard men would come at the sound. The rookies would panic. It would look, on paper, like an unlucky first run for 4 brave young players. Kang Wu felt something inside his chest close up the same way it had closed in Sola's kitchen. He did not move yet. He watched. He had a rule for himself, one he had made in hell and never broken. He did not step out from cover until he understood the shape of a fight. Numbers first, then skills, then exits. So he watched the Andress players spread out. He counted 6. The mage wore a ring on his left hand. The 2 swordsmen were A rank by their gear. At the back stood a bored healer filing her nails. Then he closed his eyes and reached, very lightly, into the marsh, with a strand of his sealed senses. The lizard men were half a kilometer south, 15 of them at least. 2 of them were larger than the rest. Warriors, probably. All hungry. He opened his eyes and smiled. Nothing in the reeds moved to give him away. His breath was silent. His footsteps did not splash. He had learned in hell that a demon king who wanted a room quiet could ask, and the air would obey. He asked. The marsh around him went quieter than a held breath. Even the bubbling water hushed. He stepped out of cover and walked, without hurry, along the edge of the Andress ring. Not one of the 6 turned. Not one of them saw him. He walked among them like a shadow at noon. He crossed behind the mage. He drifted past the healer. He passed close enough to touch the scarred leader's shoulder. Then he kept walking, out into the deeper marsh, in the direction the lizard men were coming from. Halfway to them he stopped. He unwrapped the little sound he had been holding back and let it out at last. Not from him. He pushed it forward. A soft ringing that lifted from the reeds 100 meters ahead of him and moved south. Loud, steady, panicked. The exact sound a group of frightened rookies would make crashing through water. He listened. 15 sets of clawed feet started running toward the sound. Then more. From further off, joining because a pack always joined. He nudged the ringing east, then south, then east again, drawing the lizard men in a long, slow curve back toward the Andress ring. He himself walked calmly the other way, back to the reeds behind the dry mound. He crouched down. He waited. The Andress leader was still explaining contract law to a 15-year-old girl when the first lizard man burst out of the reeds behind him. There is a moment when a hunter suddenly becomes prey that lasts about half a second. The face changes. The eyes forget every clever plan. The scarred man had that moment on his face, and Kang Wu, watching from behind the reeds, felt a very quiet satisfaction settle over him. The lizard men came in a wave. The Andress mage tried to raise a barrier and got a claw through his ring hand instead. The healer stopped filing her nails and screamed. The two A-rank swordsmen fought well. At first, they cut through 3, then 4. But the barrier they had been paid to trust was not there. The rookies they had been hurting scattered into the reeds like frightened birds. The lizard men kept coming. The scarred leader made the mistake of trying to run. A large warrior lizard, one of the two Kang Wu had noticed earlier, brought him down easily. Kang Wu did not watch that part. He had seen worse a great many times. He kept his eyes on the 4 rookies instead, tracking them at the edge of his senses, drifting a quiet layer of protection around each of them, so that when a lizard man lunged for one, the lunge somehow always missed. None of the 4 saw him. None of them knew. By the time the marsh went quiet, the Andress 6 were pulp on the wet ground, and the lizard men were licking their claws. Kang Wu stepped out of the reeds. The lizard men turned as one and saw him. He asked them, in a language nothing in this world should have understood, to please stand still. They stood still. He walked among them. He placed his palm on the chest of the pack leader, and a soft, dark warmth flowed from the beast into him, the authority of gluttony purring like a well-fed cat. He did the same to each of the others in turn, and each of them lay down and closed their eyes without pain, and the pack ended without a sound. His level climbed. Twice. 3 times. Small bells rang in his head. He waved them off like flies. He crossed to the ruined Andress 6, and where their bodies still held any residue of demonic energy, from black market pills they had swallowed to boost their stats, he drank that too. The healer had been carrying more than her share of it. He drank her clean. The rookies had regrouped in a shivering knot at the far side of the mound. He walked toward them, hands open, calling out in a friendly voice that the gate was safe now. The oldest of them, a boy of maybe 18, looked at his face, then at the corpses of 6 A-rank hunters, and could not decide whether to bow or bolt. Kang Wu smiled at him and told him the Andress party had been tragically ambushed by an unusually large lizard man migration. Very sad, very unfortunate. The rookies should go home, report it to the authority, and never speak of the man who walked them out of the marsh. If they were asked, they had not seen anyone else. The boy nodded, eyes huge. The 15-year-old girl looked up at him and asked, in a whisper, who he was. He told her he was a very ordinary F-rank player just trying to help. She did not believe him, he could see that. But she nodded too. He walked them all out of the gate. He waited outside the parking garage until the authority came for their statements. He gave a false name to a distracted officer and vanished before anyone thought to check it. That night, on Sola's couch, he lay awake for a long time listening to the small sounds of the apartment. Sola's mother snoring gently in her room, the refrigerator clicking on and off, a neighbor's cat scratching at the door. He turned the day over in his mind. 6 A-rank hunters, corrupt, chained to something bigger than themselves. He had felt it on the healer's residue, a signature not quite of this world. A whisper of the cult he had noticed in that candlelit chamber the moment he had come home. The demon cult was not a rumor, it was a nest, and it had grown fat in the years he had been gone. That decided him. 2 days later he found what he was looking for. There was a player in Seoul the underworld nicknamed the Cow. He was heavy, slow, kind-faced, and famously stupid. He ran errands for anyone with cash. Rumor said the errands he ran for Andress were not the polite kind. Kang Wu tracked him to a noodle stall in a night market, sat down beside him, ordered a bowl of the same broth, and waited. The Cow ate, Kang Wu ate. They said nothing for 20 minutes. Then Kang Wu leaned over and, in a mild voice, told the cow that a very interesting rumor was going around about a small altar in a basement out in the industrial district. A ritual altar, a place where certain players offered certain other players in exchange for certain gifts. The cow choked on a noodle. Kang Wu smiled the way a kind uncle smiles at a slow nephew. He said he was not, personally, upset about this altar. He was, in fact, in the market to be a sacrifice himself. He had heard the rewards were interesting. The cow stared at him. Kang Wu held out a small stack of bills. The cow took the bills. That night, blindfolded and bound loosely at the wrists because that was what the ritual required, Kang Wu was led down 4 flights of stairs into a basement that smelled of old wax and rust. He allowed himself to be pushed forward. Cold hands laid him back on a stone altar. A black cloth was draped across his chest. He was in a very good mood. Around him, in a wide circle, 22 hooded figures began to chant. His senses drank in the room. High-density demonic energy pooling in the center of the ritual, feeding into the altar and, from there, into the body they had prepared as a vessel, him. The chant thickened. Candles guttered. The air pressed down as if the room were sliding underwater. Under the black cloth, Kang Wu smiled. The cult did not know it, but they were pouring water into a well with no bottom. They had, by good luck, chosen the one man in the country whose empty stomach ran deeper than any ritual they had ever fed. The authority of gluttony stirred in his chest and opened its mouth. The energy that should have shredded him from the inside out began, quietly, to pour into him instead. His level ticked up, then again, 10 times, 15, 20. Small bells rang in the back of his mind, and he laughed under the black cloth, and the cultists went right on chanting because they thought their sacrifice was screaming. At the 21st bell, Kang Wu opened his eyes and sat up. The cloth fell off him. The chanting stopped like a wire had been cut. Around the altar, 22 cultists stared at a man who was supposed to be a hollowed corpse and was, instead, sitting up on their stone with his hands folded neatly in his lap. He looked at them. He smiled. He said, in a mild, polite voice, that he wanted to thank each of them personally. He got off the altar. He walked in a slow circle around the room. He drank each of the cultists dry, not their blood, their power. He walked from hood to hood and pulled the demonic energy out of each of them the way a child pulls string out of a spool. One by one they slumped. One by one their tattoos went cold. None of them so much as raised a hand. There was, Kang Wu discovered, a certain kind of terror that unlocked when a sacrifice sat up and started thanking you. The last man in the circle was not a cultist. He was standing at the back of the chamber near a small door, hood pushed back, a Bluetooth headset still in his ear, watching the whole thing with the frozen face of a man watching his own funeral. His name, Kang Wu already knew, was Daokan, Guildmaster of Andres, the very tall shadow behind the small altar. Kang Wu walked toward him. Daokan tried to run. Kang Wu let him get exactly 3 steps before he was in front of him, hand around his throat, lifting him off the floor. He asked Daokan a simple question. He asked whether Daokan would prefer to die in this basement in the next 30 seconds, or to live and help a very polite F-rank player understand exactly how the demon cult was organized in Korea. Daokan chose to help. Kang Wu smiled, released him, and set him back on his feet. He explained the terms in a friendly voice. Daokan would go back to his life. Smiles at the office, meetings on schedule, orders received on time. Every scrap of information about the cult was to be passed, quietly, to a number Kang Wu was about to give him. If Daokan tried to warn the cult, Kang Wu would know within the hour. If Daokan tried to hire someone to kill him, Kang Wu would come to the office and eat the killer, and then Daokan's dog. Daokan did not own a dog. Kang Wu said he would buy him one first. Daokan nodded so hard his neck cracked. Kang Wu let himself out of the basement. On the street, he took a slow breath of night air and closed his eyes. He could feel his own strength swelling under his skin. Fourth awakening only a hair away now. The seal on the Myriad Demon Gate had rattled through the ritual, and something inside him that had been silent for a very long time had begun to hum again. He walked to a nearby internet cafe because Sola's mother had told him, sternly, that if he wanted to understand modern Korea, he had to know what a PC room was. He paid for 2 hours. He sat down in a booth. He started a game called League of Legends because a boy on the bus had told him it was the most important thing in the country. He was, within 30 minutes, terrible at it. Behind him, at a nearby booth, a young woman in a long black coat was watching him over the edge of her screen. A red rose pin sat on her collar. Her eyes did not blink often. 2 nights earlier, she had followed the cow to the basement. From across the street she had waited, and around 3 in the morning a very ordinary-looking man had walked out of that basement alone, humming. Through the market she had trailed him at a careful distance. Along the way he bought a can of coffee. He tipped a busker. At one shop window he stopped to laugh, quietly, at his own reflection. Her name was Cha Yongju. She was the master of the Red Rose Guild. Everything she had seen in the last 2 days told her that the ragged F-rank player in the booth in front of her was either the strangest fraud in Seoul or the single most interesting thing to have happened to the country in a decade. She stood up, walked over, and sat down in the empty chair beside him. Kang Wu did not look at her. He was busy dying to a minion wave. She waited until his character exploded on the screen, then leaned in, very close, and said in a voice like polished glass that she would very much like to buy him dinner. Kang Wu turned his head. He looked at her red rose pin. He looked at the flat, calm violence in her eyes. He smiled the small, polite smile a demon king uses when a new problem sits down beside him. He said he was listening. She named a restaurant a foreigner would not have known existed. Private booths. No cameras. A chef who owed her a favor. She said it the way another woman might name a favorite pair of shoes. Kang Wu let his character die a second time on the screen behind him and asked quietly whether the meat was any good. Yongju blinked. Then she laughed. Once, sharp and surprised. She said the meat was excellent. They walked out together. She did not offer her arm. He did not offer his. On the street she flagged a car with a small movement of 2 fingers, and it appeared at the curb as if it had been waiting. Inside the car she did not speak. He liked her for that. At the restaurant she ordered without asking him. Ribeye, grilled mushrooms, a small dish of pickled radish, a bottle of clear rice wine. When the meat arrived she cut a piece off her own portion, slid it onto his plate, and only then did she start to talk. She told him she had watched him for 2 days. She knew about the basement, and she had not called the authority because whatever he was not an F-rank rookie, and she was tired of pretending the men who ran her city were the only ones who mattered. She did not ask what he was, she asked what he wanted. Kang Wu chewed slowly. The meat was excellent. He set down his chopsticks and told her the truth, or a piece of it. A peaceful life, he said. A full belly, he said. And a country where the people who fed on rookies in basements stopped existing. His voice dropped, quiet enough that she leaned in to hear the last part. A certain guild called Mir, he said, was going to be very, very sorry. Cha Yongju smiled slowly. She said she thought they could do business. Somewhere across the city, in the mirrored office at the top of a Mir tower, Kim Young-hun's phone buzzed with a photograph. The photograph showed a man in a plain dark jacket, sitting across from Cha Yongju in a private booth. Young-hun stared at the image for a long, still second. Then he called his brother. He said the ragged nobody had just made a friend. Red Rose Guild's headquarters sat behind a plain black door on the 14th floor of a very quiet building in the financial district. There was no signage, no receptionist. A single elevator that only recognized fingerprints. Yongju pressed her thumb to a scanner without breaking her stride, and the doors opened onto a room that looked less like a guild and more like a private library. Deep carpets. Bookshelves along every wall. A small fireplace at the far end, unlit. 6 or 7 very expensive-looking people sat at scattered tables, and every one of them looked up when Yongju walked in. Every one of them stopped looking up when they saw who she had brought. Kang Wu, still in his plain dark jacket, hands in his pockets, considered the room. He counted 3 A-rank swordsmen, 2 S-rank casters, and a woman by the fireplace whose stat pressure was so clean and layered that he almost complimented her. The woman looked back at him with mild curiosity, the way a leopard looks at a house cat that has wandered into the wrong garden. Yongju did not introduce him. She simply crossed the room, poured herself a small glass of wine, and dropped into an armchair. She said, to no one in particular, that Red Rose was now sponsoring an F-rank player. The room went still. An older man at the closest table set down his newspaper very carefully. He asked, in a voice like dry paper, whether their master had recently suffered a head injury she wished to disclose. Yongju smiled and said her head was fine. A younger man behind her, thin and sharp-faced, snorted. He said that if Red Rose was in the charity business now, he had a cousin at F rank who would love a jacket and a title. He said it the way people say things when they are used to being laughed with. Nobody laughed with him. The temperature in the room had shifted, in the way a room shifts when a predator walks in unannounced. Only the woman by the fireplace and the older man with the newspaper seemed to feel it. Both of them, without moving, quietly adjusted their weight in their chairs. Kang Wu, hands still in his pockets, gave the sharp-faced man a very small, very polite smile. He said he did not need a jacket. He said his jacket was fine. He said he would, however, like to speak with someone from Mir Guild soon. The room stiffened again. Mir was a name people did not use in living rooms. Yongju took a slow sip of her wine and told her people the plan. It was a short plan. Kang Wu was going to attend the annual Red Rose demonstration match tomorrow evening. A public event. Guilds from all over the country would send a fighter to duel for prize items. Mir would send their commander, Moon Yong-ho, as they always did. Moon Yong-ho would win, as he always did. Except this year, an unknown F-rank rookie, sponsored by Red Rose, would step forward, take Moon's spot in the ring, and take the guild's prize as well. Yongju swirled her glass gently. She said the prize this year was gargoyle armor, unique rank, custom fitted. Mir had ordered it 2 months ago from the finest smith in the country. Moon Yong-ho had already had his measurements taken. The sharp-faced man opened his mouth. Yongju looked at him. He closed his mouth. Kang Wu asked, mildly, whether he could have the armor tailored to fit him after he won it. Yongju laughed for the second time that night. The next evening, the demonstration match was held in a converted stadium the size of a small football field. Bright lights, a domed ceiling, ranked seating for 2,000 and standing room for twice that. Cameras every 10 meters. The floor was polished stone, marked with white lines, and in the center stood a raised ring of dark wood. A crowd of guild colors filled the seats. Reporters lined the balconies. Kang Wu walked out onto the stone floor in a plain black shirt, plain black pants, and no armor at all. The crowd did not know what to do with him. Announcers whispered urgently into headsets. A Red Rose staffer confirmed to the officials that yes, this was their entry. Yes, he was F rank. No, this was not a joke. The officials, after 2 full minutes of low arguing, decided that if Red Rose wished to embarrass themselves publicly, the tournament would not stop them. Moon Yong-ho stepped into the ring across from him. Moon was an SS rank swordsman with 14 years of tournament wins behind him. He was a wall of a man, half a head taller than Kang Wu, with a long straight sword and a face that had never bothered to hide contempt. He looked Kang Wu up and down. He asked the referee, loudly enough for the microphones to catch, whether the boy needed a moment to write his last will. The crowd laughed nervously. Kang Wu smiled. He asked Moon, in a polite voice, whether Moon's family had been informed of the funeral arrangements. It was a small joke, quietly delivered. A ripple went through the front row. Moon's smile went thin. The referee raised his hand. The bell rang. Moon Yong-ho was very fast. In the first half-second he crossed half the ring, sword lifted for a stroke that would have cut a lesser player in 2. Kang Wu let it come. He was, in fact, curious. At the last moment he shifted his shoulder half an inch. The sword whispered past his ear. He caught Moon's wrist as it went by, twisted, and set the giant of a man down on his back on the dark wood as gently as a father tucking in a child. Moon's sword clattered on the boards. The crowd went silent. Moon rolled up onto his feet, face darker now, and came again. 2 strokes. 3. A feint into a low sweep. Kang Wu turned each aside with the smallest movements of hand and hip. He did not counterattack. He did not want to end the match yet. He wanted first to feel out what an SS-rank swordsman of this world could do. The answer disappointed him a little. Moon's rhythm was clean, his footwork correct, his blade work well drilled, but there was no music in it, no line running from decision to decision. He fought the way a very talented student fights, and Kang Wu had, in hell, sparred with things that fought the way old rivers cut rock. The Mir commander tried a heavy overhead strike, saw it wasted, and swore under his breath. He drew a small silver token from his belt with his free hand. A ranker's item. Prohibited in tournament ring but not always caught if the switch was fast. A single-use burst of pure mana, poured into his blade for 1 killing stroke. Kang Wu saw the token, saw the switch, saw the small twist in the referee's face as the man decided, for reasons of career, not to notice. Kang Wu's eyes cooled. He stepped inside the arc of Moon's next swing. He caught the ranker's blade in his bare palm as it came down, closed his fingers, and held. The token in Moon's other hand glowed, poured its stored mana into the sword, and the blade heated white with power. The crowd gasped. Kang Wu did not move. His hand, wrapped around the burning blade, did not smoke. He gave Moon a moment to understand. The mere commander tried to pull his sword back. It did not move. Kang Wu tightened his fingers. Metal squealed. The white heat guttered. The blade snapped between them like a dry twig. Then he pivoted, drove the back of his knuckles into Moon's chest just above the sternum, and Moon Young-ho crossed the ring backward through the air and hit the wooden wall on the far side hard enough to crack it. He did not get up. The stadium sat in the loud silence a stadium sits in when it does not know whether to cheer or run. The referee, who had been about to lie about the ranker's token, forgot the lie. He raised Kang Wu's arm with a shaking hand. He announced the winner. The gargoyle armor case was carried out on a small velvet cushion by a nervous young official and placed at Kang Wu's feet. Kang Wu bowed, once, to the crowd. Then he picked up the case, tucked it under his arm, and walked out of the ring without another glance at Moon. In a private box high in the stadium, Kim Jae-hyun of Mir did not stand. He did not move. He simply set down his glass of red wine, very slowly, and told his assistant to cancel his other engagements for the evening. Young-hun, standing behind him, felt his shoulders lock up in a way they had not since the folder crossed his desk. Youngju was waiting at the back exit with a car. She said nothing at all until they were both in the back seat and the doors were closed. Then, in a mild voice, she asked whether Kang Wu had noticed anything unusual about the referee. Kang Wu buckled his seatbelt. He said the referee had been 3 years into a debt he could not pay, and Mir had recently and generously offered to help. Youngju nodded once, satisfied. She said she would have a word with the referee's employer. The gargoyle armor, in daylight, was a work of unpleasant beauty. Slate gray plates cut from the shells of high-tier stone monsters. Black leather straps. A cowl that could be pulled up over the head. It fit Kang Wu after only the smallest adjustments, which surprised the smith, because Moon Young-ho had been a much larger man. Kang Wu paid the smith in cash and asked him to add a small inside pocket for the lunchbox Sola had started packing him every morning. The smith blinked, but he did it. That afternoon, Kang Wu attended his first proper party formation. Youngju had told him he could not keep hunting alone. His records were beginning to look strange. F-rank rookie, solo D-rank clears, no witnesses. The authority was starting to write his file in yellow ink. He needed a party. 2 or 3 others, chosen carefully. Public. Photographed once in a while so nobody could pretend he was a ghost. She had brought 3 candidates. Kang Tae-soo was the first through the door. He came in the way weather comes in. Loud, big. 6'3" of thick shoulders and a booming laugh that startled the koi in the lobby pond. He was an A-rank tank with a shield skill called Unbreakable Vow, a family of struggling farmers, and the kind of face that could not lie if the flag of the country depended on it. He shook Kang Wu's hand hard enough to reset 3 of Kang Wu's knuckles. He said he had heard the ring story. He said if half of it was true, he would follow Kang Wu into anything. He said if all of it was true, he would like to meet Kang Wu's mother. Kang Wu, who had no mother, laughed a real laugh, the kind he had not remembered how to make in a very long while. He said he would think about it. Cho Yubin came next. A quiet young sorceress with round glasses and an enormous, very careful backpack. B-rank ice, some water, a small clean healing branch she had trained on her own because she liked to be useful. She bowed with the correct depth and asked whether Kang Wu preferred formal or casual party protocols. Kang Wu said whichever kept her calmest. She wrote that down in a small notebook. The third candidate was Kim Si-hoon. Kang Wu felt the boy before he saw him. There was a weight in the air the moment Si-hoon stepped through the door. Not power exactly, something more like a signature. A hum in the world, as if the Gaia system itself had picked this young man up like a piece on a board and set him down here. He was tall, sharp-cheeked, black-haired, with the kind of quiet gaze that made people around him steady themselves without noticing. 22 years old, a rank now, rising fast. The player support center had, only days earlier, tagged him with a strange new status Youngju had never seen on any file before. Protector. Youngju did not know what it meant. She said as much in a low voice. Si-hoon himself did not seem to know. He had woken up one morning with the tag on his profile. Nobody at the authority had been able to remove it. He had come to Red Rose because Yongju had asked, and because he was, quietly, hoping someone in this room would explain the strange dreams he had been having. Kang Wu shook his hand. For half a second, when their palms touched, he felt it. The Gaia system had put a counterweight in the world the exact day he had come back. A boy chosen by the machine to balance the return of a demon king. If this boy grew up along the shape the system was pushing him toward, he would become a very sharp knife pointed at Kang Wu's throat, and neither of them would even know it until the day the knife came down. That, Kang Wu decided quietly, was not going to happen. He shook Si-hoon's hand for a moment longer than politeness required. He smiled warmly. He said he had a feeling the two of them would work very well together. Si-hoon smiled back, uncertain, and said he hoped so. 2 nights later, Kang Wu asked Si-hoon to walk with him. It was a small, polite request. Late evening, a quiet street 2 blocks from the ramen shop Yongju liked. They had just finished a small D-rank clear together. Si-hoon was pleased with himself. In the field, on the last kill, he had tried a new sword form and it had felt right. Kang Wu praised him for it. He asked whether Si-hoon had a moment. He said he wanted to show him something. They turned into an alley that ran between a laundromat and a shuttered flower shop. The alley was narrow. A single dim bulb overhead. A wet strip of newspaper on the ground. Kang Wu walked a few steps in and stopped. Si-hoon stopped behind him. Kang Wu asked, in a mild voice, whether Si-hoon had ever heard of soul subordination. Si-hoon had not. Kang Wu smiled and turned and drove his fist into Si-hoon's stomach. The blow was calibrated to a hair, not enough to break bone, enough to fold a young man in half and drop him to his knees on the wet concrete. Si-hoon's eyes went wide. He tried to speak. Kang Wu crouched down in front of him, took Si-hoon's chin gently between 2 fingers, and lifted his face until their eyes met. There was a very old thing inside Kang Wu's gaze now. Si-hoon saw a piece of it. His pupils dilated. His breath stopped. Kang Wu asked him, very softly, to be still. Si-hoon was still. He put his palm on the center of Si-hoon's chest, over the sternum, and pushed a thread of demonic energy through the skin and into the soul beneath. The energy did not tear. It did not burn. It reached in like a mother's hand into a jar of marbles and rearranged, gently, 3 small stones. The stones were the ones the Gaia system had planted. Kang Wu did not remove them. He simply repointed them. Where they had been shaped to guard the world from him, he set them to guard him from the world. Si-hoon shuddered. A single tear slid down his cheek. He did not know why he was crying. When Kang Wu took his hand away, Si-hoon was still Si-hoon. His memories were intact. His personality was intact. His skills were intact. Only one thing had changed, and it had changed very deep. When Kang Wu smiled at him now, Si-hoon's chest filled with a warmth he did not question. When Kang Wu asked him a question, the answer would come honest and quick, without Si-hoon knowing why. If a day ever came when someone asked Si-hoon to hurt Kang Wu, Si-hoon would find, to his own surprise, that his hands would not obey. Kang Wu helped him to his feet. He brushed a fleck of newspaper off Si-hoon's coat. He asked, in a warm voice, whether Si-hoon was hungry. Si-hoon smiled. He said he was. They went to the ramen shop. Above them, in a place no camera could see, the Gaia system registered a change in the protector's file that it could not name and did not know how to correct. A small yellow warning bloomed in a status window nobody would ever read. The system did what systems do when they do not understand. It ignored it. Kim Si-hoon slept easily that night. After weeks of strange dreams, he dreamed instead of a warm hand on his shoulder. Kang Wu did not sleep. He sat on Sola's couch in the dark and thought about the boy in the alley for a long time. He had done it because he had to. He had done it because a knife pointed at his throat was not a knife he could allow to grow. He told himself this 2 or 3 times. He did not, he noticed, feel entirely proud of the arithmetic. Sola came out of her room around 2 in the morning for a glass of water. She saw him in the dark. She did not turn on the light. She sat down beside him and asked, softly, whether he was all right. He said he was fine. He was not sure why he did not lie better. She reached over without looking at him and took his hand. She held it for a long moment, then she got her water and went back to bed. He watched the ceiling until dawn. 3 days later, the party ran their first B-rank gate. The gate was in a remote hillside outside the city, freshly opened, freshly reported. A dark stone forest, according to the scout drone. Wyverns spawn on the boss floor. A party of 4 was standard. Yongju had cleared their permits herself. Kang Wu wore his new gargoyle armor with the little inside pocket for his lunchbox. Si-hoon carried his sword strapped across his back. Tai-su carried his big round shield. Yubin adjusted her glasses. Just before they entered, Yubin frowned at her tablet. She said the authorities' live monitoring feed for the gate had gone down for maintenance 5 minutes earlier. A routine glitch, the system claimed. She was not so sure. She had never seen a routine glitch on a fresh B rank. Kang Wu felt the air around him and smiled the small, polite smile again. He said the glitch was not routine. He said someone very stupid had decided to try their luck. He turned to Si-hoon, still smiling, and told the boy to stay close to him inside the gate no matter what happened. Si-hoon nodded, calm and certain, in the way a compass needle is certain of north. Kim Yong-hun, in a control van 2 kilometers away, watched his monitors and rubbed his hands together like a man about to enjoy a very good meal. He had 6 A-rank hunters positioned inside the gate already. 2 S-rank cleaners in reserve. A gag order signed by 3 officials. A perfect script. By nightfall, the ragged nobody who had befriended Cha Youngju would be a very sad statistic. His brother's toy hero would be a memorial photograph, and the shape of Seoul would tilt, very slightly, in the direction of Mir. He pressed a button on his console. The gate light overhead flickered from soft blue to warning red, and Kang Wu stepped inside. The forest on the other side was carved from black stone, trees taller than office buildings, their bark like polished coal, their branches lit by cold blue moss. The air tasted of wet iron. Somewhere very high above, an unseen wind moved and made the leaves click against each other in a soft, irregular clatter that sounded almost like distant bones. Tai-su drew a slow breath and murmured that this was not the kind of place a tourist would visit twice. Yubin quietly checked her tablet. Her live feed showed nothing. Not a static screen, not a maintenance banner, nothing at all, as if the tablet had forgotten the gate existed. Kang Wu walked ahead of them along a narrow stone path. Si-hoon walked at his shoulder without being told. Tai-su took the rear with his shield raised. Yubin stayed in the middle with a small pale glow already forming at her fingertips. They moved the way a well-drilled party moves, and Kang Wu, watching them out of the corner of his eye, was pleased. The first sign of trouble was the smell. Under the wet iron of the forest was another scent, thin and sour, that did not belong. Human sweat, old cigarette smoke, cheap gun oil. Kang Wu let a strand of his senses widen, and there they were. 6 ranked hunters, spread through the black trees on either side of the path in a rough net. 4 A rank, 2 S rank at the deeper spots. All of them holding perfectly still. All of them, he noted with a small quiet interest, wearing armbands that had been carefully turned inside out so no one could later name their guild. He did not tell the others yet. He wanted to know how the trap was meant to spring. 200 paces further in, the path opened onto a small clearing. In the center of the clearing sat a low stone pillar, its top hollowed into a shallow bowl. A rune circle spread out from the base of the pillar across the ground in faded silver lines. Old magic, half asleep, the kind of thing left over from whatever hand had first shaped this forest. Kang Wu did not need to read the runes to know their purpose. A binding array. Anything caught inside its ring would be pinned in place while whatever the summoner had prepared did its work. The moment the 4th foot of their party crossed the outer line of the circle, the silver runes woke up. They flared white, a humming wall of pale light snapped up around the clearing, sealing the 4 of them inside. Tai-su swore. Yubin's tablet chimed a warning. Si-hoon's hand went to his sword. From the black trees at the edge of the clearing, 6 figures stepped out. They did not speak. Their eyes were on Kang Wu. Their swords were already drawn. Their killing intent, when it came in the flat professional wave of men who had done this many times and had never been asked their opinion afterward. Kang Wu smiled his small, polite smile. He turned to Si-hoon and told him, very calmly, to keep the array intact if he could. He told Yubin to buffer the 2 of them and Tai-su with anything she had. He told Tai-su to guard Yubin. Tai-su asked, in a hoarse voice, what Kang Wu was going to do. Kang Wu unbuttoned the cuffs of his shirt, one by one, and rolled his sleeves up neatly to the elbow. He said he was going to have a small talk with a rat. 2 kilometers away, in the control van, Kim Yong-hun leaned toward his monitor with a smile that did not know it was already dead. The 6 killers came in a wedge. The 2 S-rank cleaners at the back stayed just outside the ring of silver light. Their job was to sweep up whatever the 4 A ranks left behind. The four in front spread into a loose arc and moved on Kang Wu with the calm speed of men who had been paid to make it look believable. Long swords, rank charms glowing at the belt, faces of stone. Kang Wu did not move. Taisu, behind him, planted his shield in the ground and shouted a challenge, expecting to draw one of them. None of them looked at him. Every set of eyes was locked on the ragged F rank at the center of the clearing. The first blade came down. Kang Wu caught the wrist behind it. He turned. He pressed the flat of his palm against the killer's chest plate and pushed, gently, the way a parent pushes a child on a swing. The A-rank hunter left his feet, sailed backward across the clearing, and hit the humming wall of the binding array. The wall flared white. The man dropped, twitching, and did not rise. The other three froze for a heartbeat. That heartbeat was long enough. Kang Wu was suddenly among them. He did not draw a weapon. He did not need one. A hand closed on a helmet. A boot pinned a foot. The clearing filled with the very specific sounds an armored professional makes when their body is being disassembled by a man who is not, technically, using any of his real strength. The killers were experienced. They fought back. One of them scored a shallow cut across Kang Wu's forearm before the arm broke his blade. Another almost got a charm loose from his belt before Kang Wu closed his fingers around it and the charm turned to hot sand. The struggle lasted about 11 seconds. The two S-rank cleaners at the edge of the trees stared at four unconscious A-ranks piled neatly in the middle of the ring, and at Kang Wu standing in the middle of them, straightening his sleeves. One of them, a woman with a scar under her left eye, made a small sound in the back of her throat. It was the sound a professional makes when the shape of a job has changed under her feet. They turned to run. They got 3 steps. Si-hoon was there in front of them, sword drawn, calm as still water. He did not know why he was so calm. He had never fought S-rank before in his life. But his hands were quiet and his footing was easy, and when the woman with the scar swung at him, his blade moved a fraction of an inch and the swing became a stumble. Kang Wu came up behind them and pressed 2 fingers into the base of each skull, one at a time, and both cleaners folded to the wet moss without a sound. The binding wall dropped. Yubin, tablet clutched in white knuckles, whispered a thank you to no one in particular. Taisu let out a laugh that was very close to a sob. Kang Wu turned to Si-hoon and gave him a small, warm smile. He said Si-hoon had done well. Si-hoon flushed as if he had been given the sun. 2 kilometers away, in the control van, Kim Yong-hoon watched his 6 monitors go, one by one, to static. He was still staring at the last of them when the van door was ripped off its hinges. Cha Yongju stepped inside. She had a small silver pistol in one hand and a smile like winter. Behind her, the driver of the van was already face down on the grass. 2 Red Rose lieutenants followed her in, and behind them, in the sharp black and gold coat of the government's Hwarang Corps, stood a tall woman with a long braid and eyes like a slow blade. Commander Baek Hwa-yong of the Hwarang Corps had, that morning, received an unusual call from a healer named Han Sola, delivered through channels that should not have existed. The call had suggested that if the commander was free that afternoon, she might want to be near a certain B-rank gate. Baek Hwa-yong had been free. Yong-hun tried, out of ancient habit, to reach for the panic button under his desk. Yong-ju shot the button. He tried to speak. Baek Hwa-yong asked him, in a very polite official voice, whether he had a lawyer or whether he would like the government to appoint him one. By evening, he was in a small, clean cell in an underground facility with no windows. Kang Wu came to see him around midnight. He came alone. He was allowed alone because he asked, quietly, and the guards found they did not want to disagree. Yong-hun was sitting on a metal bench with his hands cuffed in front of him. He looked up when Kang Wu came in. He tried to sneer. He tried to summon the old confidence, the family name, the phone numbers in his head. Kang Wu sat down on the bench beside him, folded his hands neatly in his lap, and asked how his day had been. Yong-hun told him to go to hell. Kang Wu said he had already been. The conversation that followed took a little under an hour. Kang Wu did not raise his voice. He did not lift a hand. He simply spoke, mildly and patiently. And, as he spoke, he pushed thin strands of demonic energy into Yong-hun's mind, and, one by one, walked through the rooms of the man. In each room he opened a drawer. In each drawer he read what was written: names, cult contacts, payment routes. A small photograph of a boy Yong-hun had drowned, aged 13, because the boy had cried too loudly during a ritual. Kang Wu paused at that drawer for a long time. When he stood up to leave, Yong-hun was still sitting on the bench. His eyes were open, his mouth was slightly parted. He no longer remembered his own name. He no longer remembered his brother. He would spend the rest of his life in a state facility humming a small song his mother had once sung to him and refusing to eat anything but rice. Kang Wu paused at the door, looked back once, and said quietly that this was a mercy. He left the photograph on the bench beside the man. Outside the cell, in a small viewing room, Baekhwa Yong stood with her arms crossed and did not turn her head when Kang Wu came out. She had watched every second on the monitor. She had watched Kang Wu's face while he walked through Yong-hun's mind, and she had learned something on that walk that she was not, yet, willing to name. She said, in a level voice, that whatever Kang Wu was, the Hwarang Corps would prefer, on the whole, that he stay on the country's side. Kang Wu smiled and said he had every intention of it. Baekhwa Yong did not smile back. She simply nodded once, sharply, and handed him a black government badge. It gave him access to any gate in the country without a party permit, any authority building without a search, and, in an emergency, the right to walk past 3 checkpoints anyone else in the country would have been shot at. He tucked it into his shirt pocket beside Sola's lunchbox tag. He did not tell her thank you. She would have found it insulting. At 3 in the morning, the raid on Mir Electronics began. The Hwarang Corps hit the main tower from the ground floor. Red Rose came in from the parking garage. A joint press release, prepared by Yongju's office and cleared by Baekhwa Yong, went out at the same time. The public did not know all of it yet, but by dawn every screen in the country was carrying the same 3 words. Mir, cult, ties, photographs of hooded figures, bank statements, ritual receipts. The little photograph on Yong-hun's bench. Kim Jae-hyun tried to run. He nearly made it. His private helicopter was already lifting off the tower's roof when a shadow dropped down from the vent above the pad and landed on the tail rotor. Kang Wu was not wearing the gargoyle armor tonight. He did not need it. He simply hooked his fingers into the tail assembly and pulled. The helicopter turned, drunkenly, and came back down on the pad in a screaming shower of sparks. The pilot survived. Jae-hyun climbed out of the wreckage with his hands raised, a smile pinned to his face, and a lawyer's speech already on his tongue. Kang Wu let him talk for 11 seconds. Then he closed the distance in a single step and set his palm flat on Jae-hyun's chest, over the tailored silk shirt, over the ribs of a man who had thought, until this evening, that he could not lose. Kang Wu drank a thin thread of the demonic taint that Jae-hyun had bought from the cult for the sake of his eternal youth. The taint left him. Jae-hyun's hair, at the temples, went from perfect black to gray in a single breath. His skin cracked at the corners of the eyes. 20 stolen years spilled back out of him where he stood. He did not scream. He did not have time. Kang Wu did not kill him. He handed the aging man over to Baekhwa Yong and stepped back. Jae-hyun would spend the rest of his life in a cell with a mirror on the wall so he could watch himself, day by day, become what he should have already been. By dawn, Mir Guild was ash. Its holdings were seized. Its cult altars were dug up. Andrus, in the shockwave, filed for dissolution. Daeokan slid quietly out of the country and, per Kang Wu's warm instructions, kept sending reports from his new home in a fishing village on the coast of Vietnam. Sola cried when she saw the morning news. Kang Wu did not know why until she wiped her eyes and told him. 2 of the missing people the cult had taken over the last 5 years had come home the night before, alive, freed from a basement in the tower's sublevel. A boy of 14, who had been a photograph on a lamppost near her hospital. His mother had come to Sola's ward last month with the flyer, and Sola had promised to pray, and Sola did not think, when she made the promise, that anything ever came of prayers. Something did. Kang Wu, sitting across from her at the kitchen table, ate his eggs quietly, and did not tell her whose hand the prayer had traveled through. 2 weeks later, he touched level 40. The 5th awakening arrived in an S-rank gate on the island of Jeju, deep under a lake of black water, where a nest of ice serpents had been eating fishermen. Kang Wu, on the party's 3rd day inside, slipped away from the others for a quiet hour, sat down on a shelf of rock over the lake, and let the seal on the myriad demon gate breathe. The gate breathed back. The system, in its patient mechanical voice, told him he was now permitted a familiar. He almost laughed, as if a demon king needed permission. Still, he closed his eyes, reached down through his own soul into the 9th circle, where his throne still stood empty and cold, and called. Something came up through the rock. She came as a small girl first. 6 or 7 years old, by the shape of her, silver-haired, with tiny scales at her temples and eyes the color of a hot forge. She stood on the rock in a plain white shift, blinked at him, and burst into tears. Her father, she said between sobs, had left her. Her father had told her one day that he was going out and had never come back. She had waited, alone, in the deep places, for longer than she could count. Kang Wu stared at her. He knew her father. He had killed things beside her father in the deep circles. Kareth, the demon dragon. A quiet, sorrowful creature. Kareth had left Hell during the second millennium and had never returned. And Kang Wu had never asked why, because in Hell you did not ask questions like that. He crouched down in front of the little girl. He asked her name. She whispered that it was Echidna. He held out his hand. He said gently that if she liked, she could stay with him. Echidna did not answer with words. She launched herself into his chest, wrapped both small arms around his neck, and held on with the strength of a young dragon who had been alone in the dark for a very long time. Kang Wu, in the middle of an S-rank gate, on a shelf of rock over a lake of black water, sat very still and let a child cry into his collar. He did not, he realized later, feel entirely like a demon king on that ledge. He felt, in a small unfamiliar way, like a father. He carried Echidna out of the gate on his shoulder. The Gaia system took a full 9 minutes to process her, mostly because it kept trying to categorize her and failing. She could switch, in a blink, from a small silver-haired girl to a full black dragon whose head brushed the ceiling of the Red Rose Library. Yongju took one look at the dragon in her library and calmly poured herself a very large glass of wine. 2 other guests had come out of the gate with them. They were not summons, they were human. A young swordsman and a young priestess, both dressed in clothing the tag on the neck confirmed had been sewn nowhere on Earth. They had stepped through what they had been told was a monster gate in their own city on their own world. Their world, they said in a language Kang Wu understood without difficulty, was called Eleanor. Their king had sent them to close the gate. Instead, the gate had spat them out onto a shelf of rock in a Korean lake. Yubin, fascinated, took very careful notes. Kang Wu let them keep their weapons. He fed them. He set them up in a small hotel room paid for by Red Rose and told them, kindly, that going home might take a little time. The priestess bowed to him. The swordsman studied his face for a long moment and asked, quietly, whether Kang Wu was, by any chance, a very old being wearing a young man's shape. Kang Wu laughed and did not answer. A week later they got the call about the lake. The lake sat in a valley 2 hours south of Seoul, and something in it had begun to eat boats. A team of authority scouts had gone down in the dark and had not come back up. The gate under the water had been catalogued as S-rank a decade earlier and had been quietly ignored by every guild in the country, because the only thing anyone knew about the boss was that it was very large, very fast, and preferred deep water where humans could not fight it. Kang Wu asked mildly whether the boss could be dragged onto land. Yongju looked at him for a long moment, then she smiled. The joint raid was assembled inside 48 hours. Red Rose sent 30 of its best. The Hwarong Corps sent a company under Baekhwa Yong. Kang Wu, Si-hoon, Tai-su, Yubin, and Echidna, in her small silver-haired shape, rode in the front vehicle. On the shore of the lake they set up a wide half-circle of stone giants, summoned by 3 of Red Rose's earthcasters, and anchored to the bedrock with cold iron chains. The giants stood knee-deep in the water, arms locked, forming a slow, patient hand around the mouth of the gate. Kang Wu walked out onto the surface of the lake, as if he did not entirely believe in the concept of water. He stopped over the deepest part. He closed his eyes. He called the boss. Down in the black cold, a shape half a kilometer long turned its head toward the pole. El Cuero. An old thing, older than the gate itself. An eel of a kind that had eaten fishermen for as many centuries as men had cast nets. It had never come near the surface. It had never had to. It felt the pull. And in a very long life without curiosity, curiosity found it now. It rose. The lake burst upward in a wall of water taller than the hills, and El Cuero came into the air. Its body was black lightning. Its jaw was wider than a bus. Its single central eye was a dead white ball the size of a small car. It saw a man standing on the water. It coiled to strike. The stone giants moved. They caught El Cuero as it came, wrapped stone arms around its middle, and pulled. Kang Wu, still standing on the water, drew a thin, sharp line of demonic energy up his arm and, with the flick of a wrist, cut the great eel across the length of its belly from throat to tail. Blood, black as ink, poured into the lake. El Cuero shrieked in a language older than words. Baekhwa Yong's snipers on the shore fired into the eye. Yongju's casters hit it with white fire. Sihun leaped up its side and drove his sword through the base of its skull. Taisu on the shore held a wall of blue shields together against the tide of blood so the water level did not drown the villages downstream. El Cuero fell. It took the stone giants down with it. The lake settled. The gate at the bottom, released from the anchor of the boss, quietly closed itself and vanished. Kang Wu, dripping now, walked back to shore across the slick red surface and, on the sand, sat down beside the great head of the beast. He set his hand on the eye. He drew something out. It was a small dark gem, the size of a robin's egg, and it pulsed like a slow black heart. A demon gem, the same signature as the taint he had drunk out of Jaehyun, the same signature as the residue on the healer in the marsh. El Cuero had, at some point in the last decade, been fed one of these stones, and the stone had grown inside its skull like a tumor of pure appetite. Someone was seeding the demon cult stones inside apex monsters. Kang Wu closed his fingers around the gem and did not tell the others yet. He did tell Yongju that night in the car. She went very quiet. Baekhwa Yong, in the front seat, made a phone call in a language that was not Korean and hung up looking tired. Yubin, fascinated a second time, took even more careful notes. That night Sola made kimchi stew for 6. Echidna sat on Kang Wu's lap, refusing to be put on a chair of her own. Sihun ate quietly beside him, still not entirely sure why he felt safer near Kang Wu than in his own apartment. Taesu ate loudly and told Sola's mother she was the best cook in Korea. Yubin took notes on the flavor profile. The Eleanor priestess wept over her first bowl of proper stew. The Eleanor swordsman ate 3. Sola looked at the strange family at her kitchen table and smiled. Kang Wu, watching her smile, felt something very old settle inside his chest. He did not know that halfway across the sea, in a warehouse outside Sapporo, a circle of hooded figures had, at that exact moment, finished carving the last rune of a great summoning array. The array had been designed to reach through the thinning boundary between worlds and pull into Japan, the one being in hell who had never stopped searching for him. And Lilith had felt him. She had felt him the moment he walked back onto Earth. His pull on her had come again the night he had drunk a room full of cultists dry. Tonight it came a third time, warm and clear, sitting in a warm kitchen with a child on his lap. And she had, for 2 years now, been very patiently teaching a cult on the other side of a shallow sea how to open a door for her. The array in Sapporo hummed to life for the first test. A single tentacle, thin as a whip and long as a car, slid out of a mirror in the warehouse and tasted the air of Earth. It curled once, delicately, and slid back through. In her throne of bone in the deep, Lilith opened her eyes and smiled. She said, in a voice only her cult could hear, that she was coming for her husband. In Sola's small warm kitchen, Kang Wu paused with a spoon halfway to his mouth. A single cold thread crawled up the back of his neck. He glanced at the window. He saw nothing. He set the spoon down. He set his hand, quietly, on the top of Echidna's silver head, and Echidna leaned into it without knowing why. Somewhere far away, a bell he had hoped never to hear again had started to ring. He did not tell anyone at the table. He only smiled at Sola and asked for another bowl.